Here we are, back with good old Rainer. What wisdom can we bring from his writings to today, and what can we use to inform the future? Well, okay, let's take another look. The context around the work of environmental control has shifted immensely. Banham was fascinated by the range of methods available to us, all in the search for human comfort in unhospitable environments. What's this? Okay, well, now we need to consider whether we should be building in those environs in the first place. Okay. Well, I mean, yeah, alright, okay, there's so much more to consider these days. The problem has shifted from a localized issue of how to best temper your architecture to a global crisis of our race hurtling towards planetary annihilation. Comfort is so easy to achieve these days that we have to be even more concerned with the methods and sources of our control over it. We have a responsibility beyond our buildings to consider. We did end up covering this last week, so for a more detailed interpretation of present-day conditions, hit the rewind button. Stay tuned though for a short synopsis. What I understand to be Banham's main point in all of this, that knowledge is the most powerful form of environmental control, is still relevant today. However, the target can no longer be said to be comfort. Rather, the pursuit of knowledgeable solutions is in the service of efficiency, conservation, and sustainability. Banham's problems held most relevance inside the home. It was about the creation of interior environment and the tempering of it. Now we must consider a global context for every single built intervention. Our responsibilities are in many ways much greater. The crux of this problem is that all solutions exist on a local scale, with you and me and our buildings which exist only in one place at a time. Yet the crisis is a global one, so we must live and think on a much broader scale than we are able to act upon. So, what next?
Extrapolating Banham's ideas a century or so out into the future and splicing in my own perspectives, the following scenes depict two potential futures of opposing polarity. The structure-power dichotomy Banham presents to us in Chapter 12 is turned into an extremist trajectory of ideology. Imagining if the world has fully committed to one side or the other can help us understand the shortcomings of both. Important to note, however, is that these futures are not dystopias, nor utopias, nor even e-utopias. They exist simply as provocations in a singular timeline among many. Regardless of the likelihood of any future, we can learn a great deal from their presentation and reflections upon them. Scene 01, The Luddite Future.
Radio Alpha welcomes you to the 2060s. The annual State of the Terrasphere address is slated to commence shortly. Please tune your solar receivers to the correct frequency and stay on the line. Thank you. Following the collapse of the American hegemony in the late 2040s, the influences of consumer culture and the enormous pressure on continual production have waned significantly on the global stage. The mega machine ground to a halt around 2055. Proving Rudolf Barrow to be accurate on many different levels regarding his 1987 predictions. Without the economic backing of the debt-secure dollar, the Chinese and European growth engines were crippled, and soon died out entirely. The world's previous major economic, diplomatic, and military powers have all but reverted to subsistence and agrarian lifestyles and are enjoying levels of peace and relative prosperity unfamiliar to 20th century generations. Through a redefinition of the dwelling place, following guidelines set in place by one of the global community's most respected thinkers, Bruno Latour, after the election of Donald Trump in 2016 and the resulting spiraling descent of the American superstate, communities have been able to achieve a sustainable codependence model of living with the local terrestrial beings. A harmonious existence is perhaps too generous, as we have seen continued minor conflicts on the Asian and American continents. However, we have secured the health of our planet through an enormous global effort. It is our pleasure and duty to express our gratitude towards the collective and individual efforts that have returned us to a safe and sustainable relationship with our home. The first group we would like to thank are the literal architects of this revolution. Through diligence, ingenuity, and innovative practices, they managed to cut the 40% of global carbon emissions produced by buildings to near zero over the course of 2 decades. Our worst economic recession to date put their profession into danger in the 2020s, and the international cessation of construction in 2040 threatened to kill it off for good. Despite these hardships, they managed to organize around a new set of principles, committed to our terrestrial brothers and sisters, and reinvigorated our conception of what it means to dwell on our Earth. Working with legislators and engineers, buildings were retrofitted to reduce the strain on our already waning power grid. Cities were shaped, communities planned, infrastructure rehabilitated, all with minimal but careful intervention. 90% of the global community's buildings and life are completely passive. It is truly a remarkable accomplishment. We thank you for your service. Next, we would like to thank the
See Note 2. The Technocrat Future.
Attention Citizen FT347, the annual Hegemony Holocaust is about to begin. Please cease your current production, set your StimSim implant to full sensory control, and make yourself comfortable. Thank you. Following CERN's breakthrough in nuclear fusion capabilities 3 years ago, 2060 is poised to be the brink of a new era. Our 2040 switch to 100% renewable energy was not in vain, but it came with its costs. Major industry dwindled, trade slowed immensely. Shipping became a luxury. But, over the course of the last 2 years, we have seen the resurgence of major industry across the globe. After the lifting of our legislation limiting power consumption to on-site only, we have seen a technological explosion surpassing that of the classical Renaissance or Industrial Revolution. The Western hegemony and Eastern hegemony have ceased their cultural conflict and are now working together to create a better world for all terrestrials. Trade has increased 34,500% from last year, commerce has exploded, and scarcity is a thing of the past we no longer have to concern ourselves with. The mega machine is no longer degenerate, but through our collected efforts is a generator of change and positivity for our world. For the success of this post-climatic regime, we must acknowledge the endeavors of several groups and fields. Firstly, the breakthroughs in fundamental physics would not have been possible without the contributions of. Secondly, the and of course the designers of our new communities and ways of living, architects. The profession led us through the interstitial period of self-sufficiency and on-site generation. Without their efforts, Zizek's predictions of the zero hour would have come to fulfillment decades ago. The nuanced resource management systems developed in conjunction with engineers and systems analysts allowed us to maintain our lifestyle through the most trying times we have faced to date. For that we thank you. But not only for sustaining our old way of life, also for giving us newfound freedoms in the Tokamak epoch. Our previous limits on habitation have been removed. We can, without worry or guilty conscience, now live wherever and however and in whatever we so please. Hegemony citizens are afforded a level of freedom of residence never before achieved. The conditioning of environs has become so trivial that we are seeing the emergence of a new naturalized movement, living entirely externally upon one's property in a tempered and comfortable climate, while beyond the barrier of temperance you may have a raging blizzard or raking desert sun. For providing to us the last rung on the ladder to complete freedom, we thank you.